Medicine as a vocation, like life as a vocation, in my experience, is the adventure of recognizing in the midst of the daily various events a sudden and mysterious companion. To try not to break or forget that thin thread that leads you into the depth of the significance of the reality. The significance of the reality being the presence of the mystery. In particular, in the vocation of being a doctor, a very interesting thing happens, that your vocation and the vocation of the patient follow for a while the same path. You're called together in front of the mystery, and there is a mutual and mysterious link through which your vocation is more realized through the vocation of the patient, and vice versa. And how Ruth put it beautifully this morning, the wounded and the Samaritan are inseparable. I would like to try to exemplify that with a short story. So I work as a physician in Italy, like part-time, in a hematology department. And some time ago, we had a patient named Mehar, an Indian man following the Sikh religion, who expatriated in Italy from India to raise money for his family. And all the family was in India. A very nice man, and he came to our attention because he suddenly developed a leukemia. I spoke once with a patient who was sharing with him the room in his first hospitalization. He was a local businessman with a leukemia as well. And he told me that the most beautiful experience he had during the hospitalization was meeting Mehar. Mehar would cover him at night if he was not able to, or close the shades for him if he could not move, and they really became close friends. Mehar needed a bone marrow transplant for his leukemia, but had no caregiver. He was alone. His family was in India. We found for him a matched donor in the bone marrow donor world registry, but the general policy is not to perform a transplant if the patient has no caregiver, because it could be a very difficult path, full of problems, and basically no one can bear it alone. So after many arguments with the colleagues and long attempts through charities to find a paid caregiver for him, we failed. The next Monday, we were planning a final meeting with the division chief, the social worker, and the staff to close the case without a chance of transplant. And then, all of a sudden, my boss told me, but aren't you Catholic? Can't you find someone like a monk, a priest, to take care of him? Like with a general idea of the church. Yeah, sure, I thought. But eventually, these words remained in my mind, and I was thinking, who am I to deny a chance of life to a person? So the next day, I went to a party of the Catholic movement whom I belong, Communal Liberation. It was an annual celebration of a welcoming place for kids with difficult families, which was founded in my hometown, a charity. And I saw an Indian guy, and he was part of the movement as well, and I tried. I asked him if he knew a caregiver. He did not, but a relative of him sitting next to him and hearing the story told me, why don't you ask Gianni and Tiziana, a couple of the movement with grown-up kids, no grandchild yet, space at home. And so they were both at the party. So I tried, and I explained the whole story. When I did that, Tiziana burst in tears, telling me, years ago, somebody else asked me to welcome a child in my family, and I said no, and I regretted so much. Now I know it is not you asking me that, it is God. Basically, it was Saturday, and they made their decision on Sunday, and on Monday, I participated in the department meeting, raising my hand and telling everybody, I found 2 caregivers. So everybody turns towards me, and I said, 2 friends of mine, they will welcome him at their home. The social worker who tried for months to find a caregiver, with open mouth, asked me, but why 2 normal persons should do anything like that? And said, because of Christian charity. But he's Indian Sikh, said the chief. So that it doesn't matter. So without even knowing him, Tiziana and Gianni were as happy as they were expecting a baby. They repainted a room in the house for him, prepared everything to welcome him, and treated him really as their own son. They even screened all the bookstores in the whole city looking for some readings in Indian language for him. They had on the door of the apartment a big poster with a painting of Jesus. And when Mear saw that, he puts his head on the poster and prayed for some minutes. Because God is one, he said. When they were taking him at the hospital for the clinical checks, the other patient in the waiting room would turn their head to such a particular group. It is because of God, would answer Mear to their questions. He's taking care of everything we need. With time, when he was healthier and did not need any caregiving anymore, we were able to find for him an apartment where he could live alone in a more independent way. And we set up a meeting to discuss it with the caregivers together. He accepted, but at the same time, he started crying very loudly. I never saw him crying before, not even when he was very sick. The apartment was actually quite distant from the 2 caregivers. And at a certain point, I was the only one not crying in the room. And in this situation, I thought at the beginning, what an exaggeration. And then he said, when I was in need, they were always there. When I wanted to eat something, it was already prepared even before I asked. When I was sick, they immediately were taking me to the hospital. And I suddenly understood that he was thinking to lose their friendship with them, and more deeply to lose something more that he encountered in life, an answer to his profound human needs. The day of the moving, the patient who was previously sharing the room with him in the hospitalization came with his whole family, with his car to help him moving. And he brought his kids with him. Although very young, he wanted them to help with the moving to show them what it was like to be friends. Eventually, the outcome of the transplant got very complicated, and he was often in and out of the hospital. He was able to go back in India for the last time to visit his family, the wife and 3 kids. It was 4 years that he had not seen them because of leukemia and everything. When he reached his village after a very long trip, he called by phone Tiziana and Gianni in Italy, shouting that this was the best day of his life. After this trip, the clinical condition got worse again, and my 2 friends accompanied him until the end of his life. At the very end, he wanted to see only the 2 of them. I was not there, but my friends told me that he died holding their hands, with the nursing staff inside the room crying and saying that they never saw anything like that, such a gratuitous love among persons who were not relatives. And everybody, nurse and medical staff, thanked them for what they did. After his death, the social worker organized through the high school of her daughter a fundraising to help the kids of Mear in their education. This was a high priority for him. He would call his kids every day to know how they were doing and to make sure they did their homework. And this high school of my hometown now is financing through a charity the school fees of his kids, so they are able to continue their education in a good school, in a private school in India. And at last Christmas, the social worker shared with me a letter she received from the wife of Mear, full of gratitude, that was ending with the phrase, "May baby Jesus bless you all abundantly." Tiziana and Gianni's life was radically changed. After sharing with their friends their experience, some of the friends started opening their family to welcome people. So as a conclusion of this example, I think that the thread leading you to the depth of reality never leaves you alone. By reaching the truth of reality, you reach a companionship, a friendship, and a unity. And this can happen, in my understanding, because who is calling you, being the vocational call, is the Lord of everything. And it is Him that you encounter in this path. So this encounter with the meaning of things gives you a unity in yourself and with the reality. It is something given. Maybe we could call this unity the health. I think that exactly that is lost in the aberration of the medical profession as business, career, and in burnout. By losing the meaning of it, what is left of reality is nothing more than what you see. So you can use it for your own sake. And here is the medical profession as a business or as a career. And one is always so alone and disunited in that. The link that unifies you with reality is broken, and the reality seems actually against you, and you cannot bear it anymore, so you step back, and here comes the burnout. You don't want to know the other anymore. You prefer to manage the case, so the other becomes a burden you try to cope with as best as you can. And so you lose all the richness of the relationship. It is a progressive loss of the sense of participating in something bigger than you, in your existence and in your profession, being your profession the expression of yourself in reality. You forget that you belong to something bigger, full of a mysterious meaning that includes yourself and the reality around you, and that is calling you. The very fact that this unity is given and this meaning is unveiled in an encounter makes most of the attempts of self-containing the medical burnout distress not sufficient. It is rather a relationship that leads to a healing. To conclude, the biggest challenge that threatens the physician nowadays to me is that the cry of the heart for the real meaning of reality is diluted in a million things, including the whole culture surrounding us, which seems against it, and probably we ourselves, in a way, are against this, because it's painful and it's costly. Including the technological advancements shining like a promising answer to every need, including a health system that is overwhelmed by increasing number of patients and frequently understaffed and under-resourced, and so the burden of a hectic work with no time for relationships, and also including a trend toward the so-called defensive medicine, where the guidelines of your profession are more oriented to avoid legal problems rather than to meet medical needs. And I think, to conclude, that the ultimate strength that we have is that this cry of the heart never stops, because we are made like that. We are made for happiness. And also that the answer is calling you from within the reality. Thank you.